You know what hurts more than betrayal? It's when it comes from the person who used to fall asleep holding you every night. Last week, I got sued. The people suing me, my biological parents. They claimed I stole their retirement fund. But the truth is, I only accepted the scholarship I bled for. My name is Noah Reynolds. I'm 28 years old, living in Seattle, and I thought I had finally built a perfect beginning. I just paid off my first apartment, landed a stable job at a major software company, had a small savings account, and most importantly, wasn't relying on anyone anymore. Then came that Tuesday night. I cracked open a cold beer, ordered pizza, and turned on the balcony lights to celebrate what I called freedom. That's when the doorbell rang. A delivery guy handed me an envelope, thick, formal, with a bold black logo stamped across the top. Crandall, Pierce & Walters, LLP, Chicago. I didn't know anyone in Chicago, but the names on the document hit me like a punch to the gut. Richard and Maria Reynolds, plaintiffs. My parents. I laughed. That empty, automatic laugh your brain makes when it hasn't caught up to the shock yet. But as my eyes scanned line after line, the air in the room grew heavier with every word. Defendant has breached a verbal agreement to repay the plaintiff's educational investment. Plaintiffs demand $161,400 in repayment, plus interest and legal fees. Failure to comply within 30 days will result in asset seizure, including but not limited to the defendant's current residence. I couldn't breathe. This apartment, this was everything I'd worked for. Thousands of hours juggling part-time jobs, choosing a state school over Stanford because it was affordable. This place was proof that I had finally broken free. And now my own parents, the same people who cried when I walked across that graduation stage, were dragging me into court to take back everything. The tuition, the roof over my head. Why? How does someone you love become the one coming after you? And what really happened 10 years ago that led to this? To understand why I went completely numb holding that lawsuit from my own parents, you need to know the story behind it. The past I used to believe was full of love and sacrifice. I grew up in a modest 2-story house in the suburbs of Tacoma, Washington. My dad was a mid-level loan officer at a bank. My mom was a nurse at a local clinic. We weren't rich, but we weren't struggling either. They always told me, we may not have much money, but we have love and family values. And I believed them. For almost 20 years, since I was little, I was the good kid. Straight A student, never got into trouble, always trying to make my parents proud. Every time I aced an exam, I'd place the report card on the kitchen table like a gift. My mom would pat my head and say, "Noah, you're the hope of this whole family." Back then, I thought it was encouragement. Now, I realize it might have been a contract I never agreed to. I gave everything to school. No summer camps, no big birthday parties. While my friends were learning guitar or playing on the soccer team, I was at home studying for the SAT and working part-time at the library. Starting in 9th grade, my parents kept saying, "You need to think about scholarships. We can't afford college." I understood. I agreed. I thought we were all on the same team. My dream was Stanford. I'd read all those inspiring stories about groundbreaking tech projects and the world's most creative students. I knew this was a long race, so I built my own roadmap like a war plan, maintain a near-perfect GPA, volunteer with 3 different social programs, win a state-level science award, and finally, rewrite my personal essay 19 times. The day I got accepted, I screamed so loud the neighbors thought there was a fire. I ran into the house waving the letter like it was a golden ticket from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. My mom was doing the dishes. She looked up, smiled faintly, and said, "Oh, that's nice." My dad furrowed his brow and told me to sit down. Right then, I felt something was off, but I didn't question it because I believed they loved me, that everything they did was for me. What I didn't know was that day marked the beginning of the end of my dream, not because of circumstance, but because of the very people I thought were my strongest support. That night, instead of celebrating, I got called to the kitchen table like I'd done something wrong. My dad laid out a yellow notepad and an old laptop running a financial calculator app. His voice was firm. "We need to have a serious talk, Noah." I nodded, still buzzing with excitement. I pulled out the letter and pointed to the part that said I'd received a prestigious scholarship and financial aid package. But my dad cut me off. "Don't just read the headlines. That stuff is usually a small part. You have to understand, college costs way more than just tuition." He started typing in numbers: tuition, housing, textbooks, insurance, living expenses, even round-trip flights home for the holidays. With every line, the total climbed higher. When he hit the last number, the screen flashed close to $250,000. I swallowed hard. "But how much is the scholarship actually covering?" I asked. My mom gently placed her hand over mine. Soft touch, but her voice was ice cold. "It's only a partial scholarship, Noah. You're still on the hook for the rest." I looked up at both of them. "But I didn't see anything that said that. Are you sure? Do you have an email? Where's the detailed breakdown?" They exchanged a glance. Then my dad spoke without making eye contact. "They sent that information to the email we listed on the application. Your mother's. She read it. You need to trust us." And I did. I nodded. I said, "Okay." I let them walk me away from my dream and into reality. From Stanford to a state university. From a global future back to my old bedroom with peeling beige walls and a desk from middle school. I didn't cry, I didn't complain. I just went quiet, as if the dream had never existed. The hardest part wasn't giving up Stanford. The hardest part was starting to believe maybe I never deserved it in the first place. That fall, I enrolled at Washington State University. While my friends moved into dorms and started their campus lives, I was still sleeping in the same room I had since 6th grade, next to a termite-eaten dresser and a ripped Seahawks poster on the wall. I took the city bus to class, brought homemade sandwiches for lunch, worked nights at a convenience store down the street. I didn't complain. I kept telling myself, they sacrificed. I'm just helping the family. But everything changed just a few months in. One Friday night, I got home from a late shift and found the whole family sitting at the dinner table. Something felt off, too quiet. On the table was a bottle of wine my mom only opened for special occasions. My dad was smiling, proud, glowing. Then he looked at me and said, "Son, we've got great news. Zachary just got accepted into Eastbrook College in New York." I froze. Eastbrook? That's one of the most expensive private colleges on the East Coast. I stammered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Wait, I thought we couldn't afford Stanford." My dad nodded, still smiling. "Right, but your mom and I talked it over. For Zach, we decided we'll make it work. Maybe sell the old car, maybe postpone retirement a bit, but this is a big opportunity for him." I turned to my mom. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She just poured Zach another glass of wine and said, "He needs a solid start. I know you understand, Noah." Zach, the kid who barely passed his classes, never cared about books, never once mentioned long-term goals, was now getting a 6-figure fresh start. And me? That's when it hit me. To them, I was the one who had to sacrifice, so the other one could be prioritized. They didn't say it out loud, but the message was clear. You're the one who carries the weight. He's the one who gets to live. That night, I lay awake in bed staring at the ceiling. I wasn't jealous. I wasn't angry. I just felt replaced. I had given up my dream, but they never gave up their favoritism. 10 years after that night, I lay in bed wondering who I was in their eyes. I thought I'd made it through. I'd graduated, found a job, never asked them for a single dollar after college. I lived modestly, saved every penny, skipped vacations just to build enough for a down payment on my first apartment in downtown Seattle. And then, just days after paying off my mortgage, I got the letter. A letter from Crandall, Pierce and Walters, LLP, stating that I was being sued for breaching a verbal agreement to repay educational expenses. It wasn't a request to talk. There was no, "Let's work this out as a family." No handwritten note, no personal message, just cold clinical legal language that cut deeper than any knife. Total cost includes parent plus loans used for the defendant's education, with interest, legal fees, and financial losses over a span of more than 10 years. Amount demanded, $161,400. Failure to pay within 30 days of receipt will result in asset seizure, including but not limited to the defendant's current residence, and wage garnishment. I read those lines at least 10 times. Each time my heart pounded faster, my head spun, not because of the number, but because of this surreal, gut-twisting feeling. I was being stabbed in the back by the very people who once held me in their arms. My parents, the same people who once told me, "Go to state school, we'll help a little," were now rewriting the story, turning help into investment. And now they wanted a return. They didn't call. They didn't warn me. They didn't even send a text. They just sued me. I sat there for hours, the letter heavy in my hands. The room seemed to shrink around me. The ticking of the wall clock echoed louder with each beat, like a countdown to losing everything. The apartment, the savings, the last bit of trust I still had left. And in the middle of that chaos, one question kept repeating in my head like a broken record. Why? I sat in my apartment all night after reading that letter. No food, no sleep, no lights. For the first time in years, I felt like a child again, trapped in the same old cage where nothing I did was ever enough. The next morning, as sunlight slipped through the blinds, I knew I couldn't just sit there waiting for them to take my home. I needed help. The first name that popped into my head was Claire Brooks, one of the smartest people I'd ever known. We'd taken the same thermodynamics class back in college, pulled all-nighters on group projects, survived pop quizzes together. Claire had always been sharp, logical, brutally honest, sometimes too honest. But that was exactly why I trusted her. After graduation, Claire went to law school at the University of Chicago. I went into software engineering. We kept in touch for a while, then life happened. It had been 2 years since we last messaged, but that morning I opened my phone, tapped her name, and typed 3 words. "I need help." Less than a minute later, she replied, "Call me." 3 days later, I flew to Chicago and met Claire at a small cafe near her office. When I slid the attorney's letter across the table, my hands trembled, not from fear but from shame. Shame that I had to talk about my family like they were scammers, instead of the people who raised me. Claire read the letter slowly, twice. She didn't interrupt, didn't shake her head. When she finally set the paper down, her eyes had completely changed. "Parent plus loan, huh?" she muttered. "This one's tricky. Legally, the debt belongs to your parents. But if they can prove there was a verbal contract, they might sue you in civil court under unjust enrichment. I stared at her. But they always said it was a gift, that they were helping me. Claire raised an eyebrow. Yeah, but courts won't just take your word for it, or theirs. They'll look at the full context. And Noah, I don't think this is just a misunderstanding. I think something's off here. She leaned in, locked eyes with me, and asked, "Are you absolutely sure that scholarship only covered part of your tuition? Did you ever see the official award letter for yourself?" The question hit like a punch to the chest. Sudden, sharp, and dizzying. I opened my mouth to say yes, but the memories came flooding back. The day I got accepted, my parents reading everything first, telling me to trust them. I'd never actually seen the scholarship letter with my own eyes. I swallowed hard. I'm not sure, I admitted. Claire leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. Then she said one simple sentence, quiet but heavy. Then the first thing we need to do is go all the way back to the beginning and start digging. Claire didn't waste any time laying out a game plan. She always worked like an architect. Every step had a purpose, and more importantly, no piece ever got left behind. "We need to verify two things," she said as we sat in her office, the desk covered with papers, laptops, and half-drunk iced coffee. 1. Did Stanford actually grant you a full-ride scholarship that year? 2. If they did, who read that letter first? I nodded, heart pounding. Nearly 10 years had gone by, and I had never once questioned the things I thought were obvious. It sounded crazy, but it also made sense. When you trust someone completely, you don't double-check. And my parents, they used to be people I trusted like that. I started by calling the financial aid office at the state university I'd actually attended, requesting a copy of my full loan history. The woman on the phone was kind and promised to send a detailed breakdown by mail. Meanwhile, Claire called Stanford's scholarship department directly. They transferred her 3 times before she finally got someone, a guy named Henderson, in charge of legacy records. The conversation wasn't loud, but if you listened closely, it felt like watching someone walk a tightrope between skyscrapers. When Claire hung up, she turned to me and said, "They need a formal request in writing, but there's one detail that really matters." I stared at her tense. She spoke slowly, emphasizing every word. According to their internal records, the scholarship notice that year was sent by email to the address listed on your application. I nodded. Yeah, I asked my mom to help me fill out the form. The email was hers, something like mariahreynolds@gmail.com, I think. Claire's eyes narrowed. That's the one. They confirmed the full-ride scholarship was awarded and that a PDF outlining all the benefits was attached to that email. My whole body went cold. I didn't remember ever seeing that email. I didn't remember reading any PDF. No one ever showed me a printout. All I had were my parents' words, telling me it was a partial scholarship, and I believed them. I never double-checked, never asked for proof. I just listened and let go of my dream. Claire looked at me, her expression razor sharp. Noah, they didn't just hide the scholarship. They controlled all the information from the start. If that was a full ride, they never needed to take out Parent Plus loans in the first place. And if they did, it might have been for a different reason. I swallowed hard. A chilling thought started creeping into the back of my mind. Maybe they didn't borrow the money to help me. Maybe it was for something else, something worse, something greedy. Claire tilted her head slightly, her voice low and deliberate. I think what we're seeing now is just the tip of the iceberg. That night, while I was going through old emails, my phone lit up. Caller, Mom. I let it ring 3 times. Then Without really knowing why, I answered. Part of me still wanted to believe it was all a misunderstanding, that they'd call, explain, apologize, drop the lawsuit. But her voice was different, sweet, gentle, almost suspiciously so. "Noah, sweetheart, your dad and we've just been so worried. This whole lawsuit thing, it's gotten out of hand. The lawyers, they made it bigger than it needed to be. I think maybe we should all sit down and talk as a family. Can you come for dinner tomorrow? I'll make your favorite pot roast." I hesitated. Claire, not Sarah, had warned me. Don't meet them alone. Every time they reach out, it's with a purpose. But I agreed. I told myself I was going just to observe, like an undercover agent, emotionally detached. I wasn't the timid son I used to be. I was going as someone searching for the truth. Their house looked the same. White picket fence, neatly trimmed lawn, windows so clean they sparkled like everything in their life was tidy, perfect. But I knew the truth. The tidiest thing in that house was the narrative they wanted people to believe. My mom hugged me like nothing had happened. My dad sat on the couch, silent, just nodded. Dinner was set more formally than usual. There were even candles. The dish really was pot roast. But the smell didn't comfort me anymore. It only made me suspicious. They didn't bring up the lawsuit, didn't mention the scholarship. Instead, my mom pulled out old photo albums, pictures of me as a kid, my 8th birthday, my high school graduation. Every page she turned, she sighed. "Look at us. We used to be so happy. I just want those days back." I stayed quiet. I knew this wasn't a reconciliation dinner. It was a performance. And then, as if waiting for the perfect moment, she placed her hand over mine, eyes glossy with tears. "Noah, your father was hit hard financially during the last recession. His retirement fund, it's practically gone. And I'm not even working full-time anymore. We're not asking for much, just a little help from the son we gave everything to." Her voice cracked, like it physically hurt her to say that. My dad stayed silent, and for the first time in my life, I saw the strings behind the curtain. This wasn't a cry for help. This was a manipulation. A psychological chess match dressed up in warm food and well-rehearsed tears. I stood up, said I had an early meeting the next morning. My mom nodded and hugged me again, tightly. "Just think about it. That's all I ask." I walked out of that house and closed the door behind me. No slamming, no yelling. But inside, one thing echoed loud and clear. They weren't sorry. They were just sorry they got caught. As soon as I got in the car, I called Claire, told her everything. She let out a dry laugh. "Good, that means they're nervous, which means we're on the right track. It's their move now, and it's time for us to hit back." That night, I couldn't sleep. The strange weight of that dinner clung to me, like I had just walked off the stage of a play where I was no longer the lead. Just a puppet caught between two directors named Mom and Dad. I tossed and turned for hours until a memory surfaced. My mom, back when I was a senior in high school, sitting at the computer late into the night. Back then, I assumed she was working or researching colleges for me. But now I remembered something else. She used to talk about a parenting forum, something like futurescholars.net or close to that. She used to giggle while typing, used to brag to neighbors. "I give advice to other parents about scholarships. I really know my stuff." I shot up from bed, opened my laptop, and typed Future Scholars Parent Forum plus 2015 plus archive. No official results. The forum had practically vanished from the internet. But I didn't stop. I went to the last place I could think of, Wayback Machine. An archive of old versions of websites long gone. I typed in the web address and selected a snapshot from April 2015, the month I received my Stanford acceptance. The old site loaded, slow, clunky like dial-up days. I browsed the categories: scholarship advice, sharing joy, sibling dilemmas. And then I saw it. A tiny thread tucked inside the section. College admissions, the good, the bad, the ugly. Title: How to Handle It When Your Younger Child Unexpectedly Receives a Full Ride. Posted by Proud Mom 88. I swallowed hard. Proud Mom 88. That was the username my mom always used. She even commented under that name on cooking videos. I clicked the thread. Just a few lines, but they blew my entire reality wide open. Our youngest just got a full ride to California. He doesn't know yet. Honestly, we're not in a great place financially. Opportunities like this don't come often. Maybe we'll use it for the older one. He needs the launch pad more. Not an easy decision, but as parents, we have to look at the big picture. I read it over and over. He doesn't know yet. Use it for the older one. Not an easy decision. No one forced her. No misunderstanding. No oversight. This was a voluntary confession. Public, proud, as if she was sharing a clever parenting strategy. I took screenshots, saved the original page, downloaded the PDF, sent everything to Claire. Less than a minute later, she called. No greeting, just, "Noah, this is it. This is the missing piece. Do you get it? This isn't hearsay anymore. This is hard evidence. Time-stamped, archived, motivated." They knew the scholarship was full. They hid it. She admitted openly that they used it for someone else. Everything changes from here. I sat still, staring at the glowing screen. No tears, no screaming, just silence. Because for the first time in my life, the truth didn't need to be said. It stood up by itself, pointed its own finger, and could no longer be denied. The courtroom that day felt ice cold, even though the thermostat was set to 70. I sat next to Claire. My tailored suit suddenly felt like a suit of stone. Every breath was heavy, rigid. Across from us sat my family, or rather, the people who used to be my family. My mother, Maria Reynolds, wore a simple beige suit, her makeup precise, but her face no longer looked like the mother I once knew. My father, Richard, sat upright, expression stone cold. He didn't look at me once. And Zach, my brother, looked pale, tired, and completely silent. Their lawyer opened with a polished speech, dripping in moral righteousness and parental sacrifice. These are devoted parents. They gave their youth, their health, their finances to raise their children. And now that one of them has succeeded, thanks to their effort, they're simply asking for a little support, as any parent would. It sounded like a bad Hollywood script, except the actors didn't match the real story. Then my mother took the stand. She cried, exactly as I expected, tears at just the right moments, hands trembling as she spoke of sleepless nights, and the financial crisis, and the faith she placed in Noah, and the heartbreak when I turned my back on the family. Claire sat motionless, eyes locked on her. Then it was my turn. Claire questioned me calmly about the scholarship, about giving up Stanford, about the years I spent grinding my way through state school. I answered, every detail, no embellishment, no bitterness, just truth. Then came their lawyer, walking toward me with a voice laced in sarcasm. Someone as intelligent as you, a software engineer, couldn't tell if your scholarship was full ride or not. You didn't check, didn't read the letter, just took your parents' word like a 10-year-old child. I looked him straight in the eye and said, because I trusted them. I never imagined the people who raised me could lie. That's not childish. That's love. The room fell silent for a moment. Then Claire stood. calm, steady. Your Honor, the plaintiffs claim they didn't know it was a full-ride scholarship, but we have evidence that Maria Reynolds posted publicly on an online forum confirming her son had received a full scholarship and that she planned to redirect it for the benefit of her older son. She clicked a remote. A screen lit up at the front of the courtroom. There it was, a screenshot from the Wayback Machine. The post from Proud Mom I8. The room buzzed softly. My mother's face went pale. Her hands trembled. My father, for the first time, turned to her with a look that wasn't shock, but betrayal. Claire stepped forward. Maria Reynolds, please confirm. Is this your account? My mother didn't answer. Did you know from the beginning that your son received a full-ride scholarship? And did you deliberately hide that fact in order to take out a loan for a different purpose? Her hand gripped the side of her chair. Her face turned to stone. And then, the most unexpected moment of all, Zach stood up. No one had called his name. No one prompted him, but he rose to his feet, face flushed, eyes brimming. I told them not to do this. From the beginning, I said it would come out. They didn't listen. I never agreed to any of this. He exhaled, like dropping a boulder he'd carried for years. I knew the scholarship was Noah's. I knew everything. I stayed quiet because I was scared. I was a coward. No one spoke. No one moved. For the first time, the truth didn't need to be investigated. It revealed itself in the voice of the one who benefited most. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, not because we won, but because, for the first time, justice made a sound. I thought it was over when Zach stood in court and exposed everything. I thought the forum post, the confession in front of the judge, that was the final curtain of a decade-long play. I was wrong. 3 days after the trial, I received a small, poorly packed envelope. In the upper left corner, handwritten in blue ink, Zachary Reynolds. I almost threw it away. But something in me whispered, what if this is the last piece of the truth? I brought it inside, set it on the kitchen table. It took me over an hour to open it, not because I couldn't find scissors, but because my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Inside was a thick stack of documents, clipped together, and a short, handwritten note. Zach wrote, Noah, I know you have no reason to forgive me, but I can't stay silent anymore. After the trial, Mom and Dad blamed everything on me for standing up, for speaking out. They've cut off contact, and now I'm scared. I don't want to get dragged down with them. What's in this packet is the full truth, not to justify, but to show you it's worse than you think. Zach. I flipped through the documents. They were account statements from an investment brokerage opened in 2015 under the name Zachary Reynolds. The very first line hit me like a truck. Deposit, $250,000, June 17th, 2015. I stopped breathing. I double-checked the date. It was the same week I received my Stanford scholarship. I kept reading. Tuition payments for Zach's first year at Eastbrook, drawn directly from this account. Down payment for my dad's new car, with a copy of the purchase contract. Flight and hotel expenses for a winter trip to Hawaii. But that wasn't what chilled me to the bone. What did was the final section, high-risk investments. They had used the majority of that money to gamble on volatile tech stocks, from unlisted startups to shady quick-return MLM-style funds. Within 2 years, nearly 80% of it was gone. By 2019, the account had just over $40,000 left, and even that was bleeding from maintenance fees. The money they saved from my scholarship was never for me. They borrowed against it. took out a portfolio loan secured by the projected value of the scholarship, and poured it into a roulette wheel they called the market. I set the packet down. The room spun, like I'd just woken up from a warped, lifelong dream. My parents hadn't just lied. They had financialized my future, turned my hard-earned success into a resume to leverage debt, and when it all collapsed, they sued their own son, just to recover their losses. I stared out the window. The city lights still glowed, cars still moved, but I wasn't the same person I was a minute ago. In that moment, I didn't feel angry. I just felt clean of any illusion that they ever truly loved me the way a parent should. 1 year after the trial ended, I left Ohio and moved to Seattle, not to run away, but to start over in a place where no one knew me as the guy whose parents sued him. My apartment was on the 6th floor of an old building overlooking Lake Union. Every morning, I'd wake up to the smell of freshly brewed coffee and the soft clang of streetcars outside. No more emergency meetings with Claire. No more attorneys. No more pages of paperwork twisted into filial duty. I had learned how to breathe, steadily, softly, without a mask. Zach still texts me sometimes. He's working at a small library in Vermont now. He once wrote, "I don't have the guts to apologize publicly, but if you ever need a witness for anything, I'll be there." I didn't reply, but I kept the message. As for my parents, they didn't leave. They didn't move. They didn't apologize. They just faded, like dry ink on an old letter. No contact, no more lawsuits, no words at all. At first, I thought I'd hate them forever, thought I needed to win to find peace. But eventually I realized hatred doesn't rebuild anything. It just keeps you living in the rubble. I didn't forgive them because they deserved it. I forgave them because I didn't want to carry them anymore. One day, as I was walking through Gasworks Park, I saw a little boy, maybe 9 years old, trying to fix a paper airplane the wind had torn apart. I stopped, helped him fold it again, this time sturdier. He smiled and ran off. I stood there for a while, watching the airplane take flight. I used to be that kid, and my paper airplane had been taken from me by the very people who were supposed to protect it. But now, I'm folding a new one with my own 2 hands, using the rest of my life as paper. And I know this, as long as I don't lose faith in myself, no one can ever steal my future again.